folks, Scott here with my 10 cards, 1 kit video featuring the Love From Lizi February 2021 card kit. This is Lizi's So Lucky card kit. Now, during her unboxings, one of her unboxings, Lizi mentioned that the Green Parade Nouveau Shimmer Powder would work very well with this kit. We got this in the Love From Lizi May 2020 card kit. So I took a sheet of watercolor paper, misted it with water, and sprinkled that Green Parade Shimmer Powder all over. I figured that would be handy to have on hand regardless of how much I used it in this kit. Now, I do make my 10 card bases from the 5 sheets of cardstock included. I do swap out Lizi's super smooth alcohol-friendly white cardstock for some plain 110-pound cardstock from my stash, but I do make my card bases from the 5 cardstocks included in our kit. Now, I do try and challenge myself to use every one of the stamps in our stamp set. So to get rolling this month, I thought I'd use this very interesting perspective stamp looking down at our feet here. I thought I'd tackle that one first. So for our first card, we've got a So Lucky card with a belly band that slides off to reveal that good coffee and you exist. So we've got So Lucky, that good coffee and you exist, with 2 of those perspective stamps on one panel. I stamped these with VersaFine Onyx Black ink on an A2 panel of Lizi's white alcohol-friendly cardstock. I did wipe away the shamrock from this stamp when I stamped it, so they weren't both holding a shamrock. I colored these with my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers. Here's a shot of all of the colors I used while coloring this. I found it pretty easy to make this scarf into an actual shirt for the second stamp. You could just connect those 2 lines right there and make it a complete shirt. So we've actually got 2 different outfits going on here. I really like that. Gave us a little more variety. I added some details to the scarf and to the undershirt here with my Pigma Micron pen. I die cut a small heart from the red glitter pattern paper in our kit using a Hero Arts nesting hearts die. I glued that in place of the shamrock on the top stamp here. I stamped the sentiment with Onyx Black ink and added some stitch detail to the sides with a Stitching Lines die from Ellen Hudson. Down 2 sides of that panel, I glued that down to a white card base. I stamped the large sentiment on a scrap of white cardstock using Versamark ink and the Love From Lizi Emerald City embossing powder. I love this embossing powder. It is so smooth and so shiny. It is so, it's one of my favorite embossing powders. I did fussy cut this sentiment, leaving a small white border around the words. Now, I fiddled around a little to figure out how to put this on top of the card. I wanted it to reveal the sentiment down below. I finally decided that a belly band would be the easiest and simplest way to do that. So I cut a piece of vellum. This is 1 inch wide by 9 inches long, wrapped it around my card, connected it at the back. It makes a nice, simple, easy belly band that does cover up that sentiment just perfect. So lucky that good coffee and you exist. I did attach my fussy cut sentiment to the vellum using some double-sided tape. No liquid glue on vellum. It always makes my vellum warp. So some dry adhesive to connect that. This almost becomes an interactive card. By taking off the belly band, you reveal the sentiment beneath. Now, I do generally have all of the ephemera from our kit spread out on my desk as I'm working on these cards, and my eye kept falling to the 2 hands. We had 2 hands in our ephemera pieces, actually 2 left hands. I think it would have been nice to have a left and a right hand, but could I possibly make those 2 left hands work together on one card? I began by fussy cutting them both out, and my second card is So Lucky, Our Lives Crossed Paths. I thought that was great fun with the fingers crossing and the crossed paths in our sentiment. When I found out that I could get these 2 sets of fingers to cross with each other, I realized it was a perfect way to illustrate this sentiment. Well, never mind the incongruity of two left hands intertwined, unless you're two-stepping or something. I did add a little bit of gray marker to the sweater on the left here for just a touch more contrast, make them just a little bit different. I glued a 2-inch strip of the orange plaid pattern paper to the middle of the zesty orange card base and added 2 thin strips of the same pattern paper, top and bottom. Now, those don't have to be exactly the same size. If you get 2 different widths, go ahead and put the thicker one on the bottom, the thinner one on the top. That still works just perfectly. I did stamp the small shamrock at the center of the plaids using some Lucky Clover ink. A lot of them got covered up, but there's a few that still show here. I outlined all of the pattern paper with the copper mirror peel-off strips. I think these are the large ones. These are the small ones. Those are the peel-offs from our kit. I die cut the So Lucky sentiment from my prepared green Parade shimmer cardstock and twice more from some 110-pound cardstock and glued those together to make a nice thick sentiment for the top of my card. I glued those all together and glued those in the top space of my card. I did cut apart this sentiment stamp so I could make it a single line sentiment. I stamped it on the card front with VersaFine Onyx black ink and then added the hands with foam tape and a couple of the enamel dots to highlight the sentiment. This is bright and shiny. I really like those intertwined fingers. So lucky our lives crossed paths. Okay, I'm kind of rolling with the ephemera here. We've got lots more sentiments to get through. This is on the vibrant green card base, and we've got I'm lucky to call you friend. I was so happy to use the lucky without the so in front of it. This could say I'm so lucky to call you friend, but it also works with the I'm lucky to call you friend. Now, I glued a 3 1/4 inch piece of the green glitter pattern paper to the center, and I edged that with 2 1/4 inch strips of the green houndstooth pattern paper. I added the Love From Lizi green holographic peel-offs but the edges of those pattern papers. I stamped and embossed the Lucky sentiment as before, but this time I actually used the shadow die to cut that out. Now that fit nicely across the center of our large ephemera clover wreath. I cut a piece of white cardstock to go behind that and then stamped my split sentiment through the holes there. So it reads, I'm lucky to call you friend. I glued the white stamped piece to the card front, added the wreath and the sentiment with foam tape, and embellished this with 3 of the wood veneer shamrocks. I also added 2 of the little green glitter enamel dots between those shamrocks at the bottom there. And I really like this layered sentiment with the smaller words behind the big lucky on top. I'm lucky to call you friend. Now we got 8 ephemera pieces in our pack featuring the girlfriends with their hands held up in a little heart shape. So I figured I had to use at least one of those. On my black card base, we've got Sometimes I Wonder How We Got So Lucky, featuring one of those girlfriend ephemera pieces. Now, I did trim the border down on these ladies to make this small enough to fit on this oval die cut. I cut that from white cardstock using some Hero Arts Infinity Nesting oval dies. I die cut the white one and then the black one from the larger die. I glued those 2 pieces together and glued my girls on top of that. Now, if you look closely, you'll see that our redheaded girl has a bow in her hair. I stamped that bow using the bow in our stamp set. I did a 2nd generation stamp. When I stamped it the first time with black ink, it was just too dark and didn't work very well with this. So I stamped it off once and then stamped it a 2nd time on some Bristol Smooth cardstock and colored that with my Zig Clean Color markers and then fussy cut that out and glued that to the back of her little wreath on her hair. I thought that was a great use for that little bow stamp, and I love how it really blends into this whole ephemera piece. I cut this shamrock pattern paper down to 3 1/4 inches wide. I glued that to my black card base and added 2 green glitter peel offs to the edges of the pattern paper. I stamped the small sentiment on a scrap of white cardstock and trimmed that to size. Then I attached the girl oval and both of my sentiments with foam tape on the front of this card. You could make a whole series of cards with all of the girlfriend pairs we have in our ephemera pack. I really like this, and I love the fact that our clover pattern paper matches their hair perfectly. Sometimes I wonder how we got so lucky. Again, that is that Emerald City embossing powder from Love From Lizi. So perfect and smooth and shiny. So I started wondering if I could use any of these small sentiments in our stamp set without the So Lucky qualifier stamp. And I came up with this 5th card here. This is on the Zesty Orange card base, and we've got We're So Very Grateful. A nice thank you card featuring that stack of cookies and one little extra cookie on top. Those are both ephemera pieces. I combined the We're stamp with the And So Very Grateful stamp to come up with this sentiment. I just masked off the and when I stamped So Very Grateful and then nestled the We're in up to that. Once I got that stamped nicely with my onyx black ink, I die cut that white panel with one of my Tonic Studios scalloped square layering basics die. This is one I got for Christmas. I'm trying to use it. I like the little bitty scallops on that instead of the great big scallops. I used the next size die to cut this bow pattern paper to go behind my white panel, and then added a plain black mat behind both of those. I glued those together and then mounted those to my Zesty Orange card base. Now, I used my craft knife to cut the border away from the left side of the medium cookie ephemera piece and then slipped that behind our stack of cookies to make one focal point with a continuous white border around that. I glued those both together, mounted those to the card front with some foam tape. I took some of our green ribbon and ran that through my Xyron sticker maker, laid that across the front of the card and trimmed it at the edges, and then tied a little bow and added that to the ribbon. We've got a bow and a bow, a bow and a bow. And finally, I added 3 orange sequins from our sequin mix. We're So Very Grateful. A nice gift of cookies would be a perfect accompaniment to this card. This is a great thank you sentiment without the need for the lucky. So I still have one more sentiment to use. I have one more large image to color. On my next card here on the soft gray card base, we've got I'm Lucky to Know You, featuring that hand and to-go cup stamp. Now, I reverse stamped the hand on the left using my silicone mat, my Tim Holtz stamping platform, also stamping the right hand, both with onyx black ink on Lizi's alcohol-friendly cardstock. Here's a quick refresher on how I do my reverse stamping. So here's my stamp platform. Please pardon the glare. Here's my Fiskars silicone mat, inexpensive, good silicone. I'm just going to lay it in the corner of my stamp platform here, and it will slide around. So I'm going to just throw the magnets on top of it. I'll take a scrap of watercolor paper. We're going to be stamping on this side. So I'm just got a tape hinge on it here, but the tape is not going to stick to the silicone. So I just threw my magnets on that hinge. So I should be able to just flip this over and back, and it'll go back in the same spot every time. Let's use our flamingo stamp for this. Let's do her reverse stamp. Let's do her over here on this side. Okay, so fold that back. Pick her up with the lid. We'll just use some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Stamp her down on the silicone. Nice impression. Flip our watercolor paper over on its hinge. Give it a nice little press. Open it back up. That's a really good first generation. Really good for reverse stamping. One more time, we can do it one more time. This is watercolor paper, so it does have a little bit of texture to it. We'll stamp our flamingo once more on the silicone, then bring our hinged piece back over. press it well. And they're a terrific reverse stamp. Any silicone pad will do this for you. Use this double hinge method here, and you can reverse stamp a couple of times on textured paper. Love this mat. I colored the hands with my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers and used the matching die to cut them both. On the reverse stamped piece, I lined up the die on the back of the cardstock using a bright light to see through the card and position the die. I think it helps to sell the sentiment with two hands on one card. Kind of going clink, clink, cheers. I'm lucky to know you. I die cut these two pattern papers to 3 3/4 by 5 1/4 using a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I cut those on the diagonal and joined those together. Now I was playing with some peel-offs to go between those two pattern papers when I realized that this washi tape would work very well as the border between those two pattern papers. So I laid a strip of washi tape on a piece of white cardstock, trimmed that cardstock down to the same size as the washi tape, and added that over the front of our two pattern pieces there. I die cut some more of that Green Parade shimmer powder card to be a mat behind that. I did cut out the center of that so I wasn't wasting all of that great shimmer powder, and glued those all down to my soft gray card base. I did add our kit peel-offs to either side of the washi tape down the center, and then I stamped the Lucky on a scrap of white cardstock, and I embossed that with some coral embossing powder. This was some embossing powder that we got in the My Monthly Hero July of 2020 kit. I was kind of amazed that it actually matched this color on the striped pattern paper almost perfectly. I die cut that sentiment with the shadow die and two more pieces in white, glued those all together for a nice thick sentiment there. I stamped the smaller sentiments using Onyx Black ink and glued the Lucky down between them. I colored one of the small wood veneer shamrocks with some Lucky Clover Distress Oxide ink. I let that dry and covered it with glossy accents for just a little bit of shine. When that was all nice and dry, I glued that to my card front. I added my two hands to the card front using foam tape. Cheers! I'm lucky to know you. That covers all of our sentiments in this stamp set. Okay, enough skirting around the issue here. This is a perfect kit for making St. Patrick's Day cards. March 17th on the vibrant green cardstock we've got. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Irish, I had another beer. What prompted this card was this ephemera piece from our ephemera pack. I thought that looked more like beer than coffee to me, so that's where I went with it. I took a 3 1/4 inch panel of that great orange plaid pattern paper, and I printed this sentiment on it using the Antelope Island silhouette font and the Plantagenet Cherokee font. I printed that directly on that pattern paper. I really like that Antelope Island font. I'll have links to all the fonts I use in this card kit over at my website at cardcutups.com if you'd like to get those fonts for yourself. I glued the printed pattern paper to the vibrant green card base and added the straight green glitter peel-offs that came in the variety peel-off pack this month on the sides. I trimmed the outer border on the outside of the wreath. This is the medium wreath. I trimmed the border down just a little bit and then fussy cut our coffee cup, or actually our beer mug, completely cut the border away on that. Then I actually trimmed the handle so it was a little straighter. It's a little crooked in our stamps and on the pattern paper, so I just trimmed one side of it, pulled it in, glued it behind there, and straightened that handle out a little bit. I thought we needed a little bit more sturdiness there to hold our beer. I glued the wreath directly down to my card base and added some foam tape to my beer mug and glued that in the middle of that wreath. A few wood veneer shamrocks adds some masculine embellishment, although I did go in and I used my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen to add a little glitter to our beer and a little glitter to our shamrock embellishments. Happy St. Patrick's Day, Irish. I had another beer. Happy St. Patty's Day! Now, Valentine's Day just passed, so I thought of this very masculine Valentine card with a sweet, punny sentiment, and we've got "You're my soulmate," using that sneaker ephemera piece from our pack. I love this so much. You're my soulmate. Ooh, a black Valentine card. This is a 2" by 5" piece of pattern paper, matted on a 2¼ by 5¼ white mat and glued to the left side of my black card base. I printed this sentiment using the Rostilla font and my Silhouette software, printed that on a piece of white cardstock, and then I die cut that with a heart die from my Hero Arts Nesting Hearts die set. I glued that printed heart down right at the center of our card, trimmed away a little bit of the white border around our tennis shoes, and attached those to the heart with some foam tape. I added some of the dark green glitter enamel dots, and then use that small heart die cut to cut 3 more of the green glitter pattern paper for a little bit of added embellishment on the side here. You're my soulmate. Heaven knows I go through lots of tennis shoes living in New York. A really nice, very masculine Valentine for your favorite runner or tennis shoe enthusiast. Now, there's a lot of coffee imagery in this kit, so I thought I should try something a little bit more caffeine oriented. And this is what we've got. Sending you a latte love. A fun little coffee pun there. Now, I stamped this to go cut without the shamrock. I actually cut the shamrock away from the inside of that small stamp. I stamped that 3 times on some Lizi alcohol-friendly cardstock. I stamped the larger overhead coffee cup on that same paper. I colored those with my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers and die cut them using the matching dies in our kit. I cut this red-green glitter pattern paper to 3¼ inches by 4¼ inches, and I glued that to my white card base just above the center. I lined the top and bottom with some Love From Lizi red glitter peel-offs and accented the ends of the short peel-offs with some red glitter mini hearts. I thought that worked really well. I really like that. I'll have to remember that in the future. This sentiment is from the Hero Arts August of 2018 kit, a big coffee kit with a number of fun coffee puns in it. I stamped that with onyx black ink, and I did emboss that with some clear embossing powder just for a little shine on our sentiment there. I took our ephemera coffee cup and wanted to get rid of the shamrock in the center of it, so I colored the green darker with my alcohol markers. Then I die cut another red glitter pattern paper heart and stuck that to the center. I outlined that and added some scribbles with my white gel pens, and then finally added some more of those glitter hearts on the center of all of our coffee cups here. I did use a double layer of foam tape to attach this cup to the card front, so it's got some nice dimension there. This is a great card for your favorite coffee lover, sending you a lot of love, maybe with a Starbucks gift card. Now, heaven knows I can be a little OCD when I'm doing my cards. This card is all about my obsessive compulsive behavior. This is our last card. This is on the soft gray card base, and we've got "You're me lucky charm." So first, I obsessed about fussy cutting this pattern paper since I first laid eyes on it. I knew I was going to have to fussy cut this edge of clover on that pattern paper and use it on one of my cards. And for some reason, I was determined to use this sentiment on a card too. Too many marshmallows in your cereal, Scott? You're me lucky charm. And I was also overconfident that I could possibly turn one of those wood veneer shamrocks into a real lucky charm. I think this came out really great. I took that large wooden shamrock and I colored inside of the etched lines with my green and dark green zig real brush markers. I let that dry very well, and then I took some glossy accents and went over the green painting with my glossy accents, and I let that dry really well. I didn't touch it. I didn't move it for many hours. It's got some really nice shine there. Finally, I finished this charm by outlining all the green sections with my Stardust gel pen that added a nice touch of gold glitter as well. And I glued a tiny clear crystal right in the center. That's actually like a nice emerald shamrock. I printed this sentiment directly on the soft gray card base using the Dream State font and my Silhouette software. Again, I have links to all of these fonts on my website over at cardcutups.com. I did fussy cut that pattern paper and trimmed it down on the left a little bit before adding that to my soft gray card base. I glued the left edge down flat to the card and added some little foam squares behind the cut edge for a little bit of dimension with our pattern paper. I arranged some smooth twine on the card front and glued that in place, trimming it at the top, a little organic necklace, so to speak, holding our special lucky charm. A touch of foam tape holds our charm in place on top of the twine. That charm really pops. I really love that. You're me lucky charm. And I like it too. You're me lucky charm. I love that card. So that's my 10 cards created with the Love From Lizi February 2021 So Lucky card kit. This is a great selection of cards. I really appreciate the unique color palette we got this month. There's lots of friendship cards, a Valentine, a thank you, and even a St. Patrick's Day card for all you Irish people out there. I almost used every stamp in our stamp set with the exception of that small bird's eye view of a coffee cup. I didn't get to that, but I did use all the other stamps in our stamp set. I used 10 of our pattern papers in our pattern paper pack, so that's actually just under half. I do have 12 sheets of pattern paper, unadulterated and still ready for use. I used a good amount of the peel-offs in our kit. I used a good amount of our ephemera pieces. Of course, I have tons more left. I did use a little bit of everything in our embellishment bag. I used some of the sequins. I used some of the washi tape. I used a number of our wood veneer shamrocks. I used some of the glitter enamel dots, even some ribbon, and I used most of the die cuts in our kit too. I did use all of the cardstock in the kit, and everything that's left over will find loving homes in my stash. Now, as of posting, this kit is still available at Love From Lizi. If I've managed to pique your imagination, you should grab a kit for yourself. Lizi's kits almost always sell out. If you do go shopping with Lizi, please use my links in the description down below. It is truly appreciated, and it helps keep a roof over our heads during this cold, dark winter. Thank you so very much for sharing your time with me here. Your support means so much to me. Please remember to like me, list me, pin me, post me, share me with all of your friends. Don't run with scissors. I send you and yours healthy wishes, cheerful thoughts, and as always, I wish you happy crafting. For more detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.